What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Clint from the Die Hard MMA podcast, brought to you by Pub Sports Radio, and this is the Total Takedown for UFC 266. Now, if you're new to the channel, if you're new to the show, we broke down the entire card, start to finish, top to bottom, on Monday. You can find that on the Die Hard MMA playlist right here on Pub Sports Radio's YouTube. What we are talking about today is, from a sports betting perspective, how long are these fights going to last? Should we be looking at the over 1.5, the under 1.5? We're going to break it down from a totals perspective rather than picking a fighter to win. Smash that like button for me and let's dive straight on into this bad boy. First fight of the evening, we're kicking the night off with our guy JSP. Jonathan Pierce taking on Omar Morales. And what we have is JSP fighting out of fight ready. He's a fighter who's got some serious finishing upside. He likes to put a pace on people. He's got a wicked ground game. He's got submissions available to him. And then Omar Morales, who's 11-1, and this guy is a striker, but even though he seems to hit like a truck, he doesn't seem to be able to finish people in the octagon. He's 34 years old, so he's kind of getting up there in age. We're getting to the point where we wouldn't expect big leaps in skill or ability from a fighter like this. So I struggle with this fight because we've seen Jonathan Pierce finished. We don't really see Omar Morales finish anybody, and we have seen Pierce finish people. We also have not seen Morales get finished. So there's kind of a little bit of a struggle on both sides of the line here. Over 2.5 rounds is minus 187, and under 2.5 rounds is plus 138. I would say to side with the violence here on this spot, but I feel like if Jonathan Pierce is going to be in the driver's seat for this fight, it's probably mostly through his wrestling, or he's going to be using the octagon size, that big cage, to circle around, use his volume, stay active. But I don't know if he's going to want to directly engage Omar Morales with big, heavy power shots, because I think he loses there, and that really gives Omar Morales an opportunity to finish and win the fight his style. So just kind of playing on game script here, I do think it's going over, but these guys are both dangerous enough that I don't really want to lay 2-1 nearly to see this thing go to the judges' scorecards. It's a pass for me, but I'm going to say over. Welterweight fight up next. Matthew Semelsberger taking on Martin Sano, UFC newcomer, Diaz fight member team. What we've got on this one is, it looks like they have taken the total off on this one for some reason, and I'm struggling to see why exactly they did that. So I do apologize here. I was not expecting to have to look this up the hard way. Matt Semelsberger is an absolute monster. This guy is a giant striker, pound for pound. This guy can knock pretty much anybody out if you give him the opportunity to. Big power in both hands. Martin Sano's a jiu-jitsu player, but he doesn't have the wrestling to back up that grappling. What I am seeing on DK Sportsbook, which should be similar to the rest of the market, is a 1.5 for this one. Under 1.5 is minus 125. The over 1.5 is minus 105, so chalked ever so slightly to the under, and I think that's appropriate. You know, we don't have a lot of tape on Martin Sano. He's not a guy we've seen compete very often, and it's been a long time since he stepped foot into the cage. When he has, what we have seen on tape is he leads with his face, and he doesn't have that wrestling offense to get people to the floor. Matt Semelsberger is a guy with good takedown defense, so even if Sano's wrestling has improved, we don't know that it's going to be good enough. And then if his striking has improved, Matt can still shut literally anybody's lights off as long as he connects with a big shot. If Martin comes out and is a new man and is able to take Matt Semelsberger down, well, he's going to have a very significant grappling advantage as a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, so you'd feel like he probably is able to get the submission and get the finish if it gets into his world. So I'm not playing this one simply because of all the questions around Martin Sano. We really don't know what we're getting with this guy, but I feel like Matt Semelsberger is going to get him. I think he's going to get him early, so I would be looking at that under 1.5 at minus 125. Welterweight fight coming up next. Short notice fill-in. Cody Brundage takes on Nick Maximov, another Diaz Army member. Brundage is 5-1. We saw his loss to William Knight on the Contender Series. Nick Maximov won on the Contender Series, fighting up at heavyweight against a ridiculous opponent that did not have a good game plan in that spot. This is going to be a grappler versus grappler spot, and Cody Brundage is big, he's strong, he's durable, and honestly, I think he's got a slight striking advantage over Nick Maximov. Now, we haven't seen a lot of Maximov striking, so that's just an assumption based on what we've been able to see. When it comes to the grappling, I think these two are relatively equal. Nick Maximov maybe has a slightly better gas tank. It looks like Cody Brundage may be a little bit stronger, but if I went back and I watched that that William Knight fight. We can see Cody Brundage flow to the back of William Knight like nothing. Now, if William Knight was not as strong and compact and powerful as he is, there's a lot of people that Cody Brundage would have tapped out in that situation extremely quickly. And then we're having a bit of a different conversation here. So I think with Cody, he struggles with power strikers, and I've not seen any power striking from Maximov. In my opinion, this is going to be a close fight. This is going to be back and forth, and it's wrestler versus wrestler. So since we've got two guys that both want to grapple, unless someone's able to get a crazy submission no one sees coming, I think we're going to go a full 15. The total here is set at 2.5. Over 2.5, it's a pick 'em. Minus 115 to the over, minus 115 to the under. It looks like the sports books are going to let the market determine where this one should go. And I think the over is the way that I would look here, because with these guys in the wrestling chops, they both have solid submission defense. I think we're going to see the judges' scorecards. Lightweight fight up next. Uros Medic taking on Jalen Turner, the Tarantula. Total here set at 1.5. The over is minus 175. The under is plus 130. And the way these two guys fight, I would be extremely tempted on violence here. I'd be looking at the under. Uros Medic is 7-0, undefeated, runs through people like a freight train, but we haven't really seen him outside that round one. Jalen Turner, on the flip side of this thing, he's a prolific finisher himself. He has no problem handling people, solid Muay Thai striking, high-level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I think he's a brown belt in this case, but he's got good wrestling, good grappling, and he's fought a much higher level of competition so far in the UFC. Now, I heard an interview with Jalen Turner. He's talked about taking this kid into deep waters and drowning him, but then he had the caveat of, I don't want to rule out an early finish, because he knows what he's capable of. So this fight could go off and it could finish at literally any point in time. We've seen Turner be a little bit chinny. If Uros Medic gets him hard, gets him early right on the jaw, it could be over. Turner could take him down and get some kind of a submission on him quick, or this thing could get dragged late. We could see whether or not Medic's got a gas tank and whether or not he can survive grappling with a fighter like Turner for a full 10-15 minutes or so. I'm thinking under has the best probability, and with the kind of offense these two are capable of, no way are you going to catch me laying a chalk price on any kind of over, even if it's just 1.5. I'd be looking violence, I'd be looking under. Women's flyweight fight up next. Roxanne Modafferi taking on Talia Santos. Total set at 2.5. Over is minus 275. The under is plus 200. And there's not a lot of ways this fight finishes. Roxanne Modafferi has been durable. That's been slipping a little bit recently. She is getting older. Talia Santos, she has big power in her punches, and she could get some kind of a ground and pound TKO if she hurts and rocks Roxy. But I think Roxanne Modafferi is more than capable of surviving in a grappling exchange type of fight, and that's really what both her and Santos tend to compete in. Roxanne Modafferi, if she gets on top, she is dangerous. She's got good jiu-jitsu, so there's the outside opportunity for her to submit Talia, but I don't see that as overly likely. I think this one's going to the cards. I don't like laying this kind of chalk price, but it seems like the most women's MMA thing to lay minus 275 on the over and just have it get there. Heavyweight fight, Shamil Abdurakhimov taking on Chris Daukaus. I am super high on Daukaus, as is everybody else at this stage, but I do think that people are counting out Shamil Abdurakhimov. People forget how dang good this guy is. Now, he is older. He is coming off of a COVID layoff. This fight had to be rebooked because of it. Lots of big questions surrounding the guy, but he's 20-5. He's incredibly experienced. He hits like a truck, and Daukaus, we have seen him clipped and rocked and knocked out before. So people want to think this is Daukaus all day. I am not looking past Shamil myself. Be careful with those parlays. Total on this one is set at 1.5. The over is minus 150. The under is plus 110. And I'm struggling with this one, folks. I'll be honest with you. I think that this fight has a chance to get over just because Shamil can be tough and durable. He's slow, he's plodding, he's heavy. Chris Daukaus has laser hand speed and big power, but if he gets rocked by Shamil, this could very easily turn into a fight where he has to be more careful with his strikes. If Shamil decides that he wants to get that respect from Chris Daukaus, this could turn into a grappling match. Like, there's a lot of other ways besides Daukaus just hits him once and he falls over that people are expecting. I think this is a sneaky over in the making, but again, the firepower on both sides of this thing, heavyweights, no way am I laying chalk on an over 1.5 against these guys. Chris Daukaus has a big speed advantage. This is a complete stay away for me, especially from a totals perspective. Next up, a lightweight fight. Nasrat Haqparast taking on Dan Hooker. Whoa, we could talk about this one for 2 hours, this whole situation that we're dealing with. Both these guys, last minute travel, the funeral, Dan Hooker's damage. Like, there are so many factors going into this fight. Total set at 2.5. The over minus 125. The under is even money, plus 100. And honestly, I'm interested. I talked about this fight being a complete pass, a complete fade from both sides. And the more I look at it, the more I think maybe we just bet violence here. I'm extremely tempted on getting even money on that under 2.5 because we know what both these guys are capable of. Dan Hooker could be damaged goods. He's taken a lot of damage throughout the course of his career. And then he's got a late flight. He's got all that jet lag coming over to the States for this one. And then Nasrat Haqparast, not only is he flying over and he's going to have jet lag, but before that, he flew out to Germany for his mother's funeral. So he's going to be twice jet lagged. I don't know how either of these guys are going to make weight. I don't know why the UFC didn't throw these guys a bone and make it a catch weight or something to help them out just a little bit. But both of them are going to be amped up. They're going to be emotional. They're going to be exhausted. They're going to be drained. I mean, like, every emotion under the sun these guys are going to have. And what that leads to me is not a lot of high fight IQ, not a lot of planning, not a lot of technique. I think these guys are just going to be ready to kill each other by the time we get to Saturday. And both of them are more than capable of flatlining their opponents. Dan Hooker's coming off a bad knockout loss. Nasrat Haqparast has extremely fast and heavy hands. We've seen him knock people out before. And Dan Hooker, he is dangerous on the feet and on the ground. This guy's got nasty submissions from a lot of different opportunities. He's got that knee up the middle, catching people coming in close. He's fighting a shorter fighter. Again, that's available. He trains with Israel Adesanya. I mean, these are some high-level fighters, and with both them coming in, I'd say a little less than 100% given the circumstances, I think violence is definitely on the table. I'd be looking under, and that one might make my card by Saturday. Bantamweight fight up next. Marlon Moraes taking on Merab. Total here is set at 2.5. The over is minus 200. The under is plus 150. Merab is a decision machine, folks, and that's where this is one of those correlating fights where the total matches your fighter. If you're looking over, you probably think Merab does his thing. He gets in there for the takedowns. He keeps a high pace striking. He's durable. He's like hitting a brick wall, and he just keeps coming at you. Constantly stays in your face, gets that body lock, grinds you up against the fence, takes you down, rinse and repeat. Marlon Moraes, on the other hand, if he wins, you're thinking under looks pretty nice because this guy comes out and he's got that flash knockout ability, head kicks, big power in both hands, flying knees. He's got a squeeze on him. If he gets your neck, and if Merab goes in for a takedown and leaves that thing open, he could be in serious trouble. If you're looking early finish, you're looking Marlon Moraes. So I'm siding with Merab. I'm on the Merab side of things, and this is one of those rare fights where I know we talked about we're not picking sides here on this particular show, but with this total, you kind of have to pick a side. I have a hard time believing that Marlon Moraes wins a 15-minute decision over Merab without putting him away. So I'm thinking over, I'm thinking Merab. We get to the main card of UFC 266, Jéssica Andrade taking on Cynthia Calvillo. What we have here is a total set at 2.5, the over minus 160, the under is plus 130. And this is a really interesting spot because we talk about opportunities to spin that women's MMA topic on its head here. Usually these fights are juiced like crazy to the over because we know women's MMA finishes are hard to come by. And what we've got is Cynthia Calvillo, who's primarily a wrestler. She's got some good technical boxing, but she really doesn't have any power to speak of. She's got submissions, but she doesn't seem to pull those out very often. And she's facing Jéssica Andrade, who's a BJJ black belt. Highly doubt she's going to submit Jéssica Andrade. Now, Andrade, on the flip side of this thing, she is uncorked fury. This chick comes out and she has power in every single limb. She's capable of body slamming you on your head, knocking you out cold. She can take you out with a rib roaster. We've seen her finish people pretty much any way you could get finished. Like I said, BJJ black belt, you're not safe on the ground from this monster either. So I think the side for the finish comes from Jéssica Andrade. If you think she wins the fight, then maybe you take a look at the under. But we could also maybe put a little bit of faith in Cynthia Calvillo's durability, her ability to wrestle, her ability to survive in these situations. And that could force an over. Looking at 2.5, minus 160, seems like a little bit of a discount for this fight to go the distance. I'm not a massive fan of that because I am on the Andrade side, and I've seen the kind of power that she holds since moving back up to flyweight. I think it's totally possible for her to get a TKO victory here in this spot, but the numbers don't lie. Most women's fights go the distance, and if we could back Cynthia Calvillo just a little bit to hang herself in the fight, minus 160 is not a bad price tag to go over 2.5. The big boys coming up next, heavyweight fight. We've got Curtis Blaydes taking on Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Total set at 1.5 once again for this one. Over is -200, under is +145. And you got to lay some serious chalk for these boys to get deep into round 2, and that is terrifying. It's another one where it correlates because Curtis Blaydes is a decision machine. He's a wrestler. He's a big-time wrestler up at heavyweight, really the only one of note. He takes people down, rinse and repeat, tires them out. He is more than capable of pounding people's faces in through the octagon floor when he gets on top, though. He's coming off a bad KO loss, and I'm curious to see how that affects him. I'm curious to see if that makes him hesitant. I'm curious to see if he slows down, because if that's the case, this over looks a whole lot better if he comes out tentative. Jairzinho Rozenstruik on the flip side of this thing, we never know what we're getting with Jairzinho because he is more than capable of flatlining anybody in about 30 seconds. But we also know that he is more than willing to take his time. He's more than willing to skirt the outside, wait for that perfect shot, that bomb. And with an opponent like Curtis Blaydes, he's got to mind the takedowns. I could see this being a very slow pace early unless one of these guys wants blood. And we don't really know what their mental state is at this point. I listened to their interviews. Neither guy likes being underestimated here. It does seem like there's a lot on the line. There's some high stakes. And again, when we see those high-level chess matches, it tends to slow the pace down. I am not touching this thing, but if I had to make a bet, I would be looking at the over 1.5. I think this thing gets a little bit late with both guys being scared to lose. Middleweight fight up next. Nick Diaz taking on Robbie Lawler, and this is one of those rare occurrences of a non-headlining fight, a non-title fight, that they've gone ahead and made 5 rounds. That favors the Diaz brothers in a big, big way. Total does look like it's been set at 2.5, though. The over 2.5 is -225. The under 2.5, it looks to be about +170 across the market here. Again, sketchy. So sketchy. This entire card, there's a lot of questions. Nick Diaz couldn't make 170, didn't even look like he had any intention of cutting to 170, so he's coming in heavy. That favors Nick Diaz a little bit. But he talked in the interview about the lack of motivation, not wanting to fight this opponent, not wanting to be here, not understanding why he's scheduled to fight at all, wanting to be out of the game, hating fighting in the first place. Mental edge probably goes to Lawler. Lawler is a guy that we haven't seen finish anybody in a long time. He's on a rough skid, but we know he's more than capable of uncorking those big bombs when he gets the opportunity. He's been training with my boy Gilbert Burns at Sanford MMA, so you gotta wonder if maybe he's looking to wrestle, maybe he's looking to use a little bit of a more high fight IQ grinding style to get this one done this time. Honestly, we have no idea what either of these guys are going to do coming into this fight. So I want to say the over. I feel like the age is going to catch up with both these guys, and not from a durability perspective, but maybe from an offense and power perspective. I don't think either guy really wants to lose. I mean, once Diaz gets out there, he's probably going to flow like Diaz does, but I also think that Robbie Lawler is going to be the one with the higher fight IQ. The first time they fought, he came in like a madman and paid for it. This time, he probably slows it down. I think he looks to use that cage control, that grappling, and if that's the case, this one does probably get into the later rounds. Who knows what happens beyond that, because in rounds 4 and rounds 5, no one really can keep up with the Diaz brother, but with Nick coming in heavy the way he is, I don't know if he can keep up with himself like he used to in the later rounds. So, big questions. Don't bet this fight. I unfortunately made that mistake already and I'm regretting it, but the over 2.5 would be the way I'd have to look from a total standpoint. Co-main event, women's flyweight fight. Valentina Shevchenko taking on Lucky Lauren Murphy. Total set at 2.5. The over is -125. The under is +100. I already took a stab at this over 2.5, folks. I'm on this one. This is an official bet. Maybe it's the only total I've bet on the entire card so far, actually. And I'm just banking on Lauren Murphy's durability. She's far bigger than any opponent Valentina Shevchenko has fought recently. And I know a lot of people want to point to Jéssica Andrade and talk about the strength and the power. And realistically, she's a decent bit smaller than Lauren Murphy. So she is not a natural flyweight fighter, whereas Lauren Murphy absolutely is. And she's big and physical and powerful for this division, more so than pretty much anybody. So I think Valentina Shevchenko is going to have her hands full when it comes to Lauren Murphy, especially in the grappling area. If Lauren has any success, it's going to be bullying Valentina Shevchenko, because Shevchenko is far more skilled than Lauren Murphy pretty much everywhere in this fight. This is a Rocky story, folks. I'm absolutely pulling for Lauren Murphy here in this spot, but I think she's got enough intangibles. I think the size, I think the durability, I think the will, I think those are all enough to just keep her in this fight. I'm not looking for her to win. I'm not looking for her to do much but survive. And if she can get me to the over 2.5, I think that's totally on the table, and Valentina Shevchenko probably kills her in the 4th round or something like that. Or we've seen Valentina work her way to a dominant 50-45 type of decision before. It's not off the table for this thing to go the whole way. So I'm looking over 2.5, minus 125, just banking on Lauren Murphy to get in there, put her best foot forward, and be tough. Main event time, Alexander Volkanovski taking on Brian Ortega. Total here is set at 4.5. The over 4.5 looks like minus 155. The under 4.5 is plus 120. And I talked about this fight earlier on my podcast this week that I thought it was going to be a dead nuts over. And these guys are going to go the full 25 minutes. And that's what Alexander Volkanovski does. But when you listen to these guys talk, you listen to the bad blood. They went through the Ultimate Fighter together. They don't like each other. Volkanovski's made it very clear that he is not fond of Brian Ortega. And then Volkanovski also is talking about trying to get that finish. He's tired of being the decision guy. He doesn't want to get paid by the hour anymore. He wants to get his opponent out of there. He also wants to be the GOAT. He wants to be the best. He wants to put a stamp on that and show people that he's not just going to outpoint everybody. He wants to finish people. Well, Brian Ortega, on the flip side of this thing, has made some of the most drastic improvements in the shortest amount of time we have ever seen. So we might have a whole brand new version of Brian Ortega coming in here on Saturday. We cannot rule that out whatsoever. And when this guy is on point, he can knock out anybody. When this guy is on point, obviously he can submit anybody. So Brian Ortega can finish Volkanovski, believe it or not, no matter where this fight takes place. Volkanovski, can he finish Brian Ortega? Probably. I mean, he is one of the best fighters we have ever seen. The problem is he tends to do the fight IQ thing and just grind his way to a win. But with his mindset, with him coming out looking for a finish, he may end up causing this thing into a bit of a firefight. I had a lean to the over earlier in the week, and the more I think about it, the more I'm thinking under. Between the bad blood, between the way Ortega fights, and the way Volkanovski is hungry for that finish, I think we're going to see a bit of an earlier night for these guys. One of these guys is not going to leave the octagon conscious, in my opinion. So I'm looking under. I'll take that violence bet. Plus 120 on the under 4.5. This is one that I haven't actually locked in because it's more of a tingling sensation on the back of my neck than something that I have statistics or numbers to back. So I may end up betting this one by fight time, but honestly, I'm not entirely sure. So there's one total I have bet, and there's two that I'm extremely interested in. Main event, violence bet, under 4.5 I'm looking at. And then we've got the under 2.5 that I'm looking at in the Nasrat Haqparast and Dan Hooker fight. Those are the two that really interest me. And then the over in the co-main event is the only one I've actually bet. The rest of these are just my leans and opinions because I must make a choice on the over or under on this particular show. Smash that like button, share the show for me if you don't mind. Subscribe here to Pub Sports Radio. Good luck. We'll see you tomorrow for the undefeated post-weigh-in show. Let's roll.